Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We're looking at Rodrigo Duterte's visit to China amid what some believe could be a pivot away from the United States. We're talking about it with embarks of the Interior Ministry of the Philippines, who joins us from Manila. Joining us here in the studio, Renato Cruz de Castro, who chairs the China Studies Department at Manila's De La Salle University. Renwei Huang, Vice President of the Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences. And from Washington, Jonah Blank, Senior Political Scientist at the RAND Corporation. Just before the break, we were talking about how they're putting this dispute on the back burner over the South China Sea, and we could see this pivot away from the United States. Epimako Densing, let me ask you, do you think, because we're still seeing joint naval maneuvers and patrols between the United States and the Philippines, are those really going to stop?
No, in my opinion, it will continue. As I mentioned, although the president made several pronouncements, it's more of a message to our friends from the United States, telling them that we intend, or our country intends to have an independent foreign policy, not based on a mendicant environment. We've been having that foreign policy for the last 30 years, close to mendicancy, and the message of our president is to simply say, if we want to continue our relationship, it would be at the same level, not one big brother, small brother relationship, but we're looking eye to eye and we're holding hands together at the same level. That's a simple message.
Big brother, small brother. And that's an important point, because oftentimes we hear Duterte allude to the fact that the U.S. is a former colonial power. How deep is the resentment?
Correct. Well, the resentment has been there even when we're still young, no? As early as 30 years ago, when the new government came into power after the Marcos dictatorship, it has continued over the years. And we have a new president who wants us to be independent from them. And again, it's very clear that the foreign policy that we'd like to tell the world is that we want to sit down at the same level as you are. Whether we're a third world country and you're a first world country, we have to sit down and talk at the same level. And that's the message of the president.
How much of this is about the reprimand that Duterte has gotten from not just the United States over the summary executions of some 3,500 people in that war on drugs?
Well, in the first place, I have to be clear with the numbers. I've seen the numbers. When we talk about the war on drugs, the difference mainly is how it is being implemented. For instance, if you talk about the first 6 months of 2016, during the time of the last 6 months of the Aquino presidency, they only have close to 500 police operations on drugs every month. So we're talking about 3,000 police operations from January to June 30. It has only created 4,000 arrests and deaths of around close to 250. From the time that President Duterte came into power, since July, there has been close to 10,000 police operations a month on drug operations.
Yeah, but
we're talking about
we had a president who earlier this week. We had a president who earlier this week told Al Jazeera he doesn't give a about human rights.
Well, the president was very clear in his inaugural speech. He's a lawyer. He understands that. But if you understand our president, he talks in hyperboles. When he says that, it means that he wants to uphold more the rights of the innocent than those who commit the crimes. And it's part of his policy is really human rights. In fact, we've been given an order to make an independent probe in the interior level on the level or massiveness of human rights violations in these police operations. We may be able to put out the report in the next 10 days. And so far, it's an issue of whether it's massive or not. We understand how human rights work. And it's very clear to us that when the president speaks something hyperbolic, we should not put it in a very clear sense. It's like a CEO. If you're a CEO, you say, I want to sell $1 billion in sales. It doesn't mean that you will hit the $1 billion, but the point there is you have to hit the highest level. When the
Renato,
president says, let's eradicate illegal drugs, it means put it in the barest minimum.
All right, Renato Cruz de Castro, I mean, there's a bit of mirth when we hear a president use curse words, but is rule of law being undermined in the Philippines?
Well, that's allegation. That's also he's very sensitive about that allegation that there are extrajudicial killings. Which accounts for the fact that he has this reaction vis-a-vis the United States. Before he was criticized by the United States for human rights violations, his policy was basically business as usual. So this notion of having an independent foreign policy is actually a reaction to the criticism he got from the United States and from the European Union, and of course from the West. So we have to contextualize, whether they're really a human rights violation or not. I think President Duterte made an effort to ask the EU, the United States, to send a probe to investigate whether there are actually extrajudicial killings happening in the Philippines. So I would say the jury is still out there.
The jury's still out, Jonah Blank?
Yes, well, I think Renato made a very good point that this prickliness towards the U.S. and the West did not come from a true policy shift. It came from the personal pique of President Duterte. It wasn't until he was, or he felt insulted, that he responded in this hyperbolic way. And let's remember, this is a pretty much omnidirectional hyperbole. This is a president who called the Pope himself sorry for the language, a son of a whore, merely because of a traffic tie-up. I think that we really should not read policy into what is often merely hyperbole.
What about the extrajudicial killings? Are those for real?
According to a wide variety of international human rights organizations, they are. And Duterte himself has essentially admitted this on a number of occasions.
All right. After that son of a whore remark.
Excuse me. Can I correct
Go
that?
ahead.
Can I correct that? I don't think there's on two occasions there's no extrajudicial killings in the Philippines on both local and foreign definition. In the investigation that we're doing, we're calling it extra legal killings. First of all, we already have.
But that's semantics, isn't it? I mean, there are people who've lost their
different.
loved ones through this.
No, not necessarily, because remember, in basic and human rights is the state has to uphold life, liberty, and security of person. The state also has the right to make a fair trial. However, the president is very clear on this. If the suspect attempts to kill the law enforcer in the enforcement of law, and it jeopardizes the life.
So there's been 3,500 resisting arrest?
No. It's not 3,500. It's only 1,600.
All right, 1,600 resisting arrest.
The 2,200 is deaths under investigation. And the 2,200, only 30% of that is drug-related. The balance of 70% is not even related to drug operations. It's just part of the operations. The 1,600 who died are those who resisted arrest in a legitimate police operations. And mind you, of the 1,600 as of today, there's already close to 30,000 arrests. So if you look at the numbers, it's almost the same, 5%. It's just the number of operations right now is 10 times higher than the first 6 months of this year. So there's really a clear indication that we really want to bring down the drug menace in the country. And please look at the perspective. The war on drugs in the Philippines is seen not only of a law enforcement issue. There's also a soft side. As early as July 15, the president has already ordered us to put in the drug rehabilitation program, both the community-based and the long-term. So we're putting in several drug rehabilitation centers. The first one, a 10,000 patient facility, will be put up by the 15th of November by the donation of a private sector. And we are now addressing the 90% of the 700 drug surrenders, into a community-based rehab program. So there's a soft side. So this is a comprehensive war on drugs. It's not just an issue of law enforcement. There's a soft side to it.
Let's remember, however, that President Duterte publicly said he would like to kill 3 million drug addicts. Now, that was almost certainly hyperbole, but he hasn't exactly tried to ramp down the perception that he is quite comfortable with a much, much more hard-edged approach.
Let's listen to the U.S. reaction to that. After a son of a whore remark directed at Barack Obama and a canceled ASEAN summit meeting, here's what the U.S. president at the time had to say.
We want to partner with the Philippines on the particular issue of narco-traffickers, which is a serious problem in the Philippines. It's a serious problem in the United States and around the world. On that narrow issue, we do want to make sure that the partnership we have is consistent with international norms and rule of law.
Renato Cruz de Castro, any objections?
Well, I think that's that's basically the nature. It's the rule of law. You know, whether you have this extrajudicial killings happening, you know, it has to be subjected to investigation. And you know, my point is, President Duterte already opened the door for international observers to come. So let's take it at based on what he said.
Renwei Huang, your thoughts on this? And
I think this is the domestic affairs of Philippines, and the U.S. could not interfere so deeply. And
you think Obama's gone over the line when he says that?
Yes, I think U.S. should reflect its policy. Why? You see, recently some alliance of U.S. has happened the same phenomenon like Philippines, like Turkey, like Saudi Arabia. So it's not only Philippine problem caused by the new president. It's also some kind of reaction to U.S. policy.
Well, let me ask you, Jonah Blank, you just heard that Renwei Huang saying, effectively that here's Barack Obama lecturing the Philippines. What's your reaction to that?
Well, this is a core part of U.S. Foreign policy. By law, the U.S. government is forbidden to provide security assistance or security cooperation with any units of the military or the police who have been credibly implicated in human rights abuses. It's really quite amazing the level to which this law dictates a lot of engagement. There are nearly 1 million cases every year that have to be reviewed, and many of them are rejected or deferred because the U.S. is not able to verify that Police Unit X or Military Unit Y has not been involved in extrajudicial killings. So the president was really simply stating what the U.S. law actually says.
Renwei Huang, your thoughts on this? Because as China's role around the world grows, more and more military partnerships are going to come about. Should China have the same kind of rules that you can't partner with people who commit human rights abuses? You can't partner with countries that commit human rights abuses.
But the precondition for our military involvement to outside is very clear that we should go along with domestic government.
Even if it means turning a blind eye to
the domestic politics or domestic affairs outside could not say you can control or change anything before the local government.
Well, the Philippines prides itself as a liberal democracy, and it signed several agreements regarding human rights, membership in the International Criminal Court. So it's also our responsibility to take criticism from other countries that share the common values with the Philippines. Rule of law, human rights, so forth and so on. So in a way, I think the Philippine government overreacted when it was criticized by a friend and allied country. We have to take into account the Philippines is part of a community of nations, basically part of what we call the Western Alliance or the West, that have to uphold those values. So if we get criticized, then we have to examine ourselves whether we are really living up to the commitment that we have basically adhered to or signed into.
Epimanco Densing, is Rodrigo Duterte too thin-skinned?
No, I don't think so. again, when we talk about criticisms, we have no problem with that. But as long as this criticism is what we call evidence-based, in fact, even in human rights, they've been already promoting that human rights advocacy must be evidence-based. So any criticism without any evidence is a mere propaganda. And the sad thing about the criticisms that our president or our country has been receiving from the international community is that they're basing their opinions on media, on local media, which obviously is not in accordance with what evidence has been saying. That any human rights violation, as they allege, is not really a violation itself, but it's really a legitimate police operation. And again, we've been looking at the numbers, and I've seen all the case folders of this at least 1,300. Each case really has a case folder. And we're verifying it right now, at least to see if there's an indicative massive violation of human rights. And again, we'll be able to put up that report in 10 or 12 days from now.
The rules of, you were talking about liberal democracy, Renato Cruz de Castro, the rules of bilateral relations in that.
Rules being part of a community of nations that share common values. So as part of this, we have to be very conscious of our responsibility and be open to criticism to countries that share our values.
Is the pendulum swinging against it when you see things like free trade agreements are harder and harder to agree upon? When you see here...
But that's basically the test of your commitment to the values that you hold dear. Like, for example, the rule of law. So if other liberal democracy criticizes you, then you have to go through a deep self-reflection. Am I living up to my commitment? Do I still adhere to these values that other countries share? And of course, if I get criticized, I don't simply shift to the other side and basically cross the Rubicon just because my friends and allies who helped me during the time when you have a major natural calamity would just simply be discarded.
Jonah Blank, soon we'll have a new U.S. president. Will the winds of liberal democracy be starting to ebb when that new president comes in?
I certainly hope not. I hope that the winds of liberal democracy will continue to blow hard and strong. And I'd like to pick up on the point that Renato just made so well. If you are committed to liberal democratic values, you should be open to criticism from friends. And the United States should not simply be lecturing other nations. The United States should be listening to the very valid criticisms of our own policy. Here in the U.S., we, as the Black Lives Matter movement has shown, we have a real problem with police enforcement in African American and other minority communities. Some Americans take criticism of that as an attack on America itself. Other Americans, and I include myself in that camp, take that criticism as an invitation to live up to our best ideals. And I think the same can and should be true in the Philippines.
All right, the Philippines and the broader region, I want to finish on this point. We're at a point where the disputes continue. I think, 11 nations who have designs on the South China Sea, agreeing to common rules. Is it something that's becoming harder and harder? I'll put it to you, Ren Wei Hong.
I think South China Sea could not be the fundamental issue between or among our neighbor countries. We can talk and have dialogue, but the domestic development...
But why is it becoming more and more tense in that case?
Yes, this is a process. From very beginning, we have very different points, a very different nationalism or sovereignty. But if we talk more, we can find some points in the middle.
Rodrigo, Renato, is it going to become harder and harder to reach some kind of a multilateral deal, a multilateral agreement that can really diffuse the tension?
Well, I can
in
only
Asian
say that
waters?
we can manage the tension either through bilateral or multilateral approach, but I don't think this issue would be resolved in our lifetimes. Now, this is a territorial dispute that would probably last for a generation. The best that we could do, the international community can do.
Why does it have to last for generations?
Well, you have basically China becoming emergent and basically determined trying to effect its maritime expansion to the South China Sea, East China Sea, and there's a factor in that this is, looking at how China how China looks at this issue. For them, it's a matter of realizing the Chinese dream.
We still use the term as put aside disputes and development first together.
Yeah.
But before we develop them together, we should put the disputes aside.
I agree with that, except that the Chinese condition also includes that we would have to accept Chinese sovereignty.
We have put it almost 30 years, but many neighbors put it not aside. They put it in the control.
Mm-hmm. Final question, I'll put it to you, Jonah Blank. As China becomes more powerful, what will the U.S. role be in those waters? And will it be increased, or will they take more of a backseat?
I think it will be increased, but only in line with the wishes and the participations of U.S. partners in ASEAN. So I don't think the U.S. is going to get out ahead of ASEAN, and likewise in consultation with Japan and Taiwan for the East China Sea. I think the U.S. is looking to be a security provider and a security facilitator for its partners in the region. But if the Philippines withdraws from that group, that weakens the group as a whole. The U.S. is quite comfortable, I believe, with nations not falling into simply one camp or the other. Vietnam, Indonesia are countries that are not U.S. treaty allies, but they are partners on very specific issues. And if the Philippines moves into that camp, I don't think it has to spell disaster for anyone.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Jonah Blank, many thanks for joining us from Washington. MP Blanco Densing, many thanks for joining us for what is a late hour in Manila, for being with us. I want to thank Renato Cruz de Castro
Thank you very
and
much.
Renwei Huang. Stay with us, though. Our Media Watch segment is next. And we say hello to James Creedon.
Hi, François.
The hashtag Duterte in China, is it trending?
It is, I think, mostly amongst people who have an interest in the story itself, in particular in the Philippines. And I'll just show you a couple of headlines first. So the slogan, "Making Friends, Not War," is appearing in a lot of headlines. And that seems to be a lot more conciliatory language than what we were seeing recently, perhaps an unfair sort of juxtaposition of headlines there. But
it's a family show. Don't use any words that,
Curse. We'll just go with curse. We do remember there was that rather fun moment there recently. In any case, images of Duterte arriving in China, all smiles, all friendliness. And so let's just take a look at the different sort of talking points on Twitter. Can we be friends with our neighbours and still keep close those from afar? That's what one Filipino Twitter user is wondering. Can this balancing act be struck, I suppose? Another pointing to the fact here, this is somebody sharing a tweet talking about Philippine stocks having their best day since the May election. So many interpreting that as a response to the visit by Duterte to China. And is this a case of Beijing to the rescue vis-a-vis Filipino economic matters? Wonders one person. How many countries have the US interacted with? Says another, much more US skeptical of the US role in the world. How many countries has the US interacted with and eventually turned into a war zone? Libya, Syria, etc. Reform the Philippines. And the same Twitter user saying, because the world does not revolve around the US only. So somebody clearly there with a will to see a diversification in terms of Filipino diplomacy. And another person here is expressing the exact opposite sentiment, that this is a case of the Philippines slowly merging into being a Chinese colony. That was the one I just showed you earlier, in fact, so I'm being a little bit repetitive there. Can we be friends with our neighbours and still keep close those from afar? I'll just finish with this poll in the Philippine Star newspaper, and what that poll suggests is that there is a lot more positive sentiment for the US than there is for China. 76% of adult Filipinos have much trust for the US, while just 22% of adult Filipinos have much trust for China. But actually 55% of Filipinos have little trust for China. So there is clearly quite a divergent picture in terms of the public perception of those two powers.
And the policies of Duterte.
Yeah.
Renwei Huang, let me ask you, because Duterte is undoubtedly a Twitter superstar. Is he a superstar on the Chinese social media Weibo?
Yes. Many Chinese feel very interesting how a new Philippine president sudden change from Aquino to a new policy. It's also a fresh phenomenon for us.
Renato de Cruz, de Castro, I know that you speak Mandarin.
I don't.
No, you don't.
My area of specialization is actually Philippine U.S. security relation.
Okay.
Not China.
I would have trolled through Twitter, but my Mandarin is a little rusty, François. So sorry, this might actually be providing a skewed picture. It's a fair point that Twitter is certainly underrepresented by Chinese voices. So certainly what's being said on Weibo would be worth taking into account too, for sure.
All right, many thanks. I want to thank our panel once again.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.